If you're like me, you're sick of all our paid politicians serving everyone's interest except the people's. I feel like many of us are starving for a real independent candidate who's got a moral compass, energy, and leadership grounded in humanity. And I think we've got one in the man whom I'm speaking with today. Guys, I'm excited to present you Jose Vega, who's taken on Ritchie Torres for his House seat in the South Bronx. Jose has shown he's not afraid to confront our corrupt leaders, and he has a track record standing up for human rights and for his community in the Bronx. Welcome, Jose. I'm glad to have the chance to speak with you.
I'm happy to be talking to you, too. Thanks for letting me come on here and talk to you.
Well, you are refreshing, to say the least. I think there's an absence of moral leaders in this country, and I just wanted to kick off by showing the viewers this one clip of you confronting this guy who's one of Ritchie Torres' advisors and an anti-China hawk. You can take it away after to explain.
Oh my God, our government listens to idiots like you? I mean, you sound so incoherent. Were you responsible for Biden's performance on the debate last week? I'm supposed to believe that Xi Jinping is this evil dictator when the United States is actually responsible for a three-front world war? Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, the three fronts of World War III, and idiots like you are trying to tell me China is the actual responsible one for World War III? I'm supposed to believe China is surveilling our kids? We have a mass surveillance state here. It's called fascism, okay? The NSA spies on everything we do. You think I give a shit if Xi Jinping cares about what I'm doing? The United States government already spies on me. This incoherent idiot up on the stage is no different than the incoherent babbler named Biden, who probably isn't running our government. Okay, I can't believe Ritchie Torres has you come and testify at our government, in our Congress. You're a fucking disgrace, okay? There is an alternative to the world right now. We don't need to have World War III. We can actually work with China. Did you know that? We can work with China every time they come. They offer a peaceful solution. Listen, don't start World War III. Hey, he's choking me. He's choking me. Holy shit. Jesus Christ, he just choked me. Jesus. Hey, my neck really hurts, man. Fuck. Oh, fuck. I can't breathe. Oh. Hey,
all right, stand up. Stand up.
Fuck.
Stand up.
Jesus Christ. What the fuck? Hey, I'm not done talking about peace, man. You can't manipulate the American population anymore. People will not fall for your antics. We can join the BRICS. We can work with the people. The fascism and the tyranny has to end here. We don't need to go to war. I'm pleading with people. I'm pleading with the American population. Don't listen to the idiots on stage. You have fascism in your own country. Don't let them take you to World War III.
Why don't you explain what we just saw in that clip? You got choked, tackled to the ground. Why were you there?
So I was there because that is a State Department spook named Matthew Pottinger. And Matthew Pottinger advises Ritchie Torres on foreign affairs, and Ritchie Torres brings him into the Congress to testify and brainwash other congressmen as well. And I was there because I saw that he was speaking at the Asia Society here in New York, and I believe there's a concerted effort right now overall in the West to try and get us from normalizing relations with countries like China. You know, China and India together make up 35% of the world's population. Just those two countries alone, right? You know, we all exist in this world. I mean, America is only 350 million people, right? But China and India together are about 3.5 billion. So, you know, that's just like a giant chunk of the population right there. And the United States is being advised to be against both of these countries and to continue to provoke tensions and war there. And whether it's stoking tensions between Pakistan and India, or whether it's stoking tensions between China and Taiwan to try and keep these countries in perpetual war, I am completely against that. I am a big supporter of the global South. I think that with what's happening with the BRICS right now represents a beautiful alternative vision for a future that I'm excited to bring these ideas and that spirit to the Bronx. Because I believe that the United States has to play a different role, not an imperial role, but one that is collaborative in nature with other countries in the global South.
I agree with you here. I feel like we share the sentiment that we're risking isolating the American empire from the rest of the world, and that the end result is not going to be pretty for us. What do you think about that?
You know, I think, for example, there was just the SCO summit, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit that happened, where you had Putin, Xi Jinping, and Modi. Now, these are three countries that the West has been trying to isolate and separate for years now, for decades now, trying to instigate each country to back away from each other, and instead it's brought them closer together. And what was discussed at the SCO meeting was international development economic projects. And one thing that they really emphasize, and this is something that people like Anya Parampil, who's part of the Gray Zone, really emphasize, is that they make great pains, in the words of the people like from the Duran, they make great pains to say that they are not anti-Western, right? They're not trying to replace the United States. They're not trying to overtake Europe. They don't have a confrontational mindset, which is so refreshing, right? You know, the United States and Western countries try to tell us, oh, we are against this country. We have these enemies. These are our enemies. And they have brainwashed a majority of the population to thinking they can be pro-war in certain cases, when a lot of that is just artificial. Most of the world right now is trying to figure out how to work together. So what I see going on right now is a viable vision that has been, you know, sadly alienated away from many Americans, where they don't know about these things. Like, you know, there's a lot of depression right now in the United States. There are people who are suffering from some form of mental illness, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that over the last 30 years, the United States has been bombing, has been pillaging, overthrowing leaders around the world, cooing different countries and their leaders, and enslaving their populations one way or another, putting economic sanctions like on countries like Syria, where we just completely destituted Syria, you know, even before Assad fell, right? And
Absolutely.
you know, so Americans don't know that there is like a whole section of the world that's like, we're marching towards peace, we're developing, and we're going to figure out how to work with each other. And I think that this is a great opportunity for the United States to be dictated now by those principles if the new generation of people coming up decide, you know what, I want to go and work with these other countries. I don't want to fight them. There's no reason for me to treat them like enemies. We can work with them. That, to me, is the future. You know, instead of treating other countries like our enemies, wait a minute, what if we worked with each other? That would be kind of crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ritchie Torres was recently exposed for investing his wealth into the same weapon makers that he was voting to purchase billions from to fuel Israel's genocide. I saw your video going into the community in the Bronx to spread awareness about this evil act, and it seemed like many people you talked to had no idea who was representing them and what kind of things he was doing. Were you surprised by this news, and are there any other corrupt acts Ritchie has committed that we should know about?
Yeah, I wasn't surprised that people didn't actually know him. The majority of people that vote for him here in the Bronx are people who are over 60. And we also have very low voter turnout rates. I believe only like 30% of eligible voters, you know, actually come out and vote. You know, it's like abysmal. You know, there's like 680,000 eligible voters in the district alone. And only at most, at one given election, which was in 2020, 200,000 people came out to vote. In this last election, only 150,000 people came out to vote. So 50,000 people just didn't show up to vote. And yeah, so, you know, I think the problem is that the Bronx has been neglected for the last 50 years. You know, so for the last 50 years, people have been writing books, doing documentaries, doing news reports, medias. Oh, the poor South Bronx. The South Bronx is where all the child poverty is just rampant, and there's just nothing. You know, somebody has to do something about it. You know, so people come over and over and over saying, we're going to fix it, we're going to do something, and nothing ever changes. So, of course, people have lost faith that any kind of electoral politics can actually work. And I'm coming in here and I'm saying, actually, I think it can work because I am born and bred here. Like, you are the people in the community. I am here and I've grown up here and I have taken these stances where I have refused to be a sellout. Now, how did Ritchie Torres actually get corrupted? See, just before this interview, I was polishing up on a couple of my Ritchie Torres history facts, right? Because he was a city councilman before he was a congressman. And it's interesting, you should do this. If you ever watch his interviews from 2014, 15, 16, he sounds like a human being. He sounds like he actually cares, right? And this is something that I spoke with a lot of people who were progressives. They said, well, I supported him because he was the first LGBTQ, he was the person of color, he was going to represent the Bronx, and he sounded sincere. You listen to these interviews, it sounds like he does give a shit about the people in the Bronx, right, when he's in the city council. And one of the reasons he went into the Congress, he said, is because NYCHA, which if you were to take the public housing in New York City alone and you took all the residents of it, it would be the 31st largest city in the United States, like just the people who live in NYCHA houses. He said that there was a $96 million deficit in their operating costs in 2016. So he said he wanted to go into the Congress to go and get that money. So it's crazy because NYCHA is still operating in a deficit. NYCHA houses are still horrible, right? I did a tour with Jeremy Lafredo of the Gray Zone where we went into these NYCHA houses. There's like piss-covered floors. Some of these places have like 2 or 3 elevators and only one of them is working and it's rickety and there's like long lines of people. These are like, 30 floor houses. So how did Ritchie Torres go from I want to be a fighter for public housing to, live, breathe, die Israel? A couple of reasons. One is because people have to understand that, Israel has such deep roots in electoral politics. It doesn't just start with federal funding, like AIPAC. There is this thing here called the JCRC, the Jewish Community Relations Council. Now, on paper, it sounds fine. It says they're just trying to bridge the gap between the Jewish community and elected officials so that elected officials can understand the needs of the Jewish community. On paper, that sounds great. There is a very large Jewish population here, and that is a very good thing. But what they do is they take elected officials, and not only elected officials, they take community organizers, they take people who are seen as leaders in the community, they take big business owners, people who have pull and sway in the community, and they pay for their trips. This is the thing. If you want to be a JCRC fellow, you have to commit to a 1-week trip in Israel. And then the weird part is, after that, then you have to go to Puerto Rico for a conference. So, they take the New York politicians and then they brainwash them. Now, when I say brainwash, I don't literally mean like they're hooking them up to wires and brain diodes and stuff. And, although I wouldn't be surprised if they were. But they send them to Israel. They give them all this propaganda stuff. And they say, and we're prepared to back you so long as you represent the interest of your community. The Jewish community, is very pro-Israeli, right? So therefore, we want you to, just be an advocate for Israel. And that's how it happens. So you have city councilmen, right? That's why when Zoran said, why would I go to Israel? I'm just going to be here in New York. And why all the other candidates felt the need to say Israel is because the Israeli lobby has such a deep hold in the local politics of New York that they ran a guy named Will Lopez in City Council District 8, I believe. He was so backed by this PAC called Solidarity PAC that was just pro-Israel. And it's like one of the poorest city council districts. It's like South Bronx and the east side of Harlem, right? So why are they backing this guy? So Ritchie Torres took a trip to Israel that was sponsored by this group. And he talks about this in interviews all the time, where he credits his trip to Israel as changing his mind. So that was 2017, 2018. 2020, he comes into the Congress And somehow in that same year, they redistrict the South Bronx, or the congressional district, to include the Northwest Bronx, which includes Riverdale. This is something that people need to understand about Riverdale. So Riverdale is where a lot of the Zionists are, people who call themselves Zionists reside. Allegedly, Jonathan Greenblatt owns property in Riverdale. And, you know, so the head of the ADL apparently lives.
Yes, we know him.
Right. Owns property up there. Right. And this is the part of the district that has the highest voter turnout. And also within the actual district has the highest fundraisers. Right. So, you know, Ritchie's, you know, the people who have deep pockets, you know, live up there, and these are the people who are the most vocal. So of course they have his ear more than the people of the South Bronx do. So like, maybe I think it was a month ago he did an interview where he's talking about, well, I have constituents in my district that, you know, actually see, you know, anti-Semitism on a daily basis, and so I have to, you know, represent them. And he's talking about, I think they only compose like 10% of the, or 20% of the population of the district, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not necessarily that he cares about their interests, he cares about their money. And he cares about them continuing the influence. And that's how it happened. But let me make another thing clear. It isn't even just the Israeli lobby that has corrupted him. Ritchie Torres went into the Congress saying, I'm going to fix public housing, and he takes money from some of the worst landlords, people who are associated with Chestnut Holdings. You can go on the FEC right now, and people who are related to the owner of Chestnut Holdings, Jonathan Weiner. There are articles. If people just type in Chestnut Holdings and you go to the news tab on Google, you will see people protesting Chestnut Holdings offices for being terrible landlords. These people donate to Ritchie Torres, and they don't donate small amounts, okay? We're talking $500 and up to the maximum amount that you can contribute, right? So Ritchie Torres, and not only that either, right? So he's got the Israeli lobby backing him. He's got corrupt landlords backing him. He also has the crypto community backing him too. He is like a big Silicon Valley tech he's pro Silicon Valley. All right. He loves crypto. He loves what is it? It's not just crypto. Well, yes, he loves crypto. He also loves Microsoft, for example. He is a big investor. Well, he himself is not investing, but he votes to make sure that anything that Silicon Valley wants, he is an assured vote that they're going to get it. So he's got the tech bros, he's got the crypto bros, he's got the Israelis, he's got the landlords, and he's got Wall Street. That's the other people that back him too. A lot of his people who backed him were from Wall Street or work in Wall Street in one firm or another. And there was one more. It was Blackstone. Blackstone is another big donor of his as well. So you just have like the worst of the worst who are backing this guy. And you realize, like, wait a minute, this isn't just like the Israel lobby is only one facet of how deeply corrupt this man is and who actually runs shit here, because it's all interconnected. It is all interconnected. And so, yeah.
I mean, the one pattern I'm seeing here is that he's backed by all this capital, all this owner class. And it's kind of backwards if you think about it, right? These wealthy individuals and institutions should not be meddling in the politics of the poorest district in the nation. Right. And when you mentioned the JCRC, you know what that made me think of? George Latimer, who I believe was the AIPAC-backed primary challenger to Jamal Bowman's district, which is right around you. Yep. He had gone on a trip. I remember researching this. He went on a trip with the JCRC right before he was allowed to get his AIPAC endorsement, and they dumped so much money into his primary challenge to Jamal Bowman, who had been critical of Israel in like a minor way. It made that House race the most expensive in history, in U.S. history.
That's right. I remember that because I remember they were talking about, there was rumors at the end of 2023 that somebody was going to primary Jamal Bowman. and that it might have been George Latimer, and that 2 weeks before he made his official announcement or something like, or 2 months, or I guess you did the research, right? But it was some time, it was a short time before he announces that he went to Israel. So there was a discussion over there, like it's so blatant, so blatant.
We know what happened.
Oh, of course we know what happened. So, yeah, and
he had to pledge allegiance to Israel before he could enter the halls of power in the United States.
And they redistricted Jamal Bowman's district too. I mean, like, I went to some of the worst places. I went to oh man, what's the name of this place up in New York? It was part of Bowman's district. Everybody there, it was like a rich, upper class, liberal establishment, and I was there with signs that said, "Don't vote George Latimer," and people were like throwing things at me, saying, "You're a Hamas supporter." I had people coming up to me with cameras saying, "Oh my God, we have Hamas supporters in our district saying we should vote for Jamal Bowman." It's like the worst of the worst in New York State. So, yeah,
they did a similar thing. They added a bunch of a geographic area with a lot of pro-Israel folk and voters and donors to change the who held the seat there, and I think it was NY-15 was the district.
Right.
I have my own beef with Ritchie. He tried using the Capitol Police to go after me because I criticized his genocidal corruption and taking millions from AIPAC. So I'm personally familiar with his corruption. What specifically has inspired you to stand up for the Bronx and take on Ritchie?
Well, that's a great question. When I did it last year, so it's not the first time I'm running. I did it last year, and I did it on a whim. I did it on a whim because we were getting, it was the October 7th had happened. And then I confronted Rachel Maddow 10 days after that, and I called what Israel was about to do an ethnic cleansing. And it was
you were right.
And I was right. And I was right. And I mean, I believe it was a genocide even before October 7th, but regardless, like, I knew, oh my God, they're going to use this as an excuse to just go after. So, and November, December, I'm seeing the images coming out, and I'm just like, I'm just in shock that this is happening. And people are, and Ritchie Torres is like the biggest defender of it. And I'm getting like fed up because I was thinking somebody's going to primary this guy, and I was hearing rumors that somebody was going to primary this guy. So I was gearing up. I was like, okay, like, I need to be ready if he goes unchallenged. I need to be ready in position. And, I was really, really upset with the Democratic Party at that time. And so come January, I'm like finalizing things. I'm like, maybe I will do this. And I heard that somebody is going to primary him. And I was like, okay, great. So I go on that person's social media profile. It looked like they were ready to do it. They were, ready to go all in. And then one day they private their account. I was still following them. When you private on X.
Yeah.
So they private their account. They delete all mention of Ritchie Torres. So then I go talk to the people that were like, that hate Ritchie Torres, who are some of the quote unquote power brokers here, or the people who are the movers and shakers of the Bronx. They said, yeah, that person doesn't want to do it anymore and got a comfy job working at the mayor's office. And
Why?
Well, because, so from what I understand now, what I was told now is that when the Democratic Club of the Bronx heard that I don't want to give away who it was because, again, it's all alleged. So, I can't just.
And if you say something, I can clip it out.
Well, point is, this person was gearing up. What they did was they offered her a position in the mayor's office that paid well and said, here, you can be more effective at getting the change you want in the Bronx than you could be by taking down Ritchie Torres. So they silenced the opposition. Part of the reason was because they didn't want the attack on Ritchie to be a litmus test for 2024 for Joe Biden at the time, which would then become Kamala Harris, because they thought that if you did get a politician to be ousted by somebody who was not running on the pro-Israel line, that it could have negative reverberations for the national as a whole, which we're seeing now, of course, but it could have negative effects for the national as a whole
and for the presidential race. And that's also why AIPAC spent $25 million against Jamal Bowman, because they needed to make an example out of him to say, see, if you're not pro-Israel, you don't get to stay here. And that's what they did to him. So,
well, if you make every race that expensive, I don't know. I was going to ask you and talk about this later, but you mentioned how the Democrat establishment didn't want Palestine to become a litmus test, especially on a national level. And we're now seeing reports, actually within both parties, but particularly within the DNC, that they're terrified of Palestine being a litmus test for the midterms. What responsibility do you think should be held against these representatives who not only fueled genocide with U.S. weaponry, but even took money in exchange for it? And in Ritchie's case, directly profited using his own money paid by him from taxpayers.
In a perfect world, they would all be sent to The Hague. And in a perfect world, they would all be tried for war crimes and being complicit. And I think that they would be tried in the Nuremberg trials. You know, one of my favorite movies is Judgment at Nuremberg, where somebody was trying the judges of Nazi Germany, right? How should the judges during the Nazi regime be tried? And I think that we need to do that again for the politicians that want to pretend like they didn't just fund a ongoing slaughter and genocide for the last about to be 2 years. It's about to be 2 years. I just looked at my calendar here. It's September 2nd. Next month, we'll make 2 years since October 7th of 2023. I mean,
it's a shame.
It's a shame. And so now what can we actually do right now? I think, for one, is primary them out or get them out. I mean, I'm not a fan of the primaries, as you know. I'm running as an independent candidate. And the reason I'm not a fan of the Democratic Party, I'm certainly not a fan of the Republican Party. I don't want people to think I'm some right-wing nut job. It's not true at all. The thing is, look at what they're doing to Zoran. Cory Booker was like, oh, that's New York. I don't want to get involved in my outside state elections. And then he goes in and he endorses with John Ossoff, I think, down in Georgia or something for re-election. Hakeem Jeffries is like, well, you know, I still have some reservations. Chuck Schumer, I guess, did endorse him. That was good, I guess.
It's surprising to me.
Yeah.
They're doing the same thing they're doing to Omar Fateh in, I think, it's in Minnesota or Minneapolis.
Yeah, look, exactly. That's exactly right. You know, I liked Omar. You know, and I want to like Zoran. You know, I want to like these people. And the Democratic Party establishment, people need to understand something. When I'm talking about the Dem establishment, I'm not talking about the individual candidates only. Yes, them too. Believe me, them too. But in New York 16th, every single Democratic Party club did not endorse Jamal Bowman. They all endorsed Latimer. Even in Mount Vernon, one of the blackest areas in the district, they endorsed George Latimer over Jamal Bowman. Okay? See, a party structure is composed of people beyond the candidates. When you see somebody talking, like a Slotkin, when you see somebody talking in the Democratic Party, I don't know, just pick any random Democrat. What's her name? The Senator Gillibrand, right? Or you see Cory Booker, you see Hakeem Jeffries. You're already seeing whatever. John Fetterman, worst of them. What you're seeing is you're seeing somebody, some consulting firm that already spoke with them, ran through whatever they wanted to say 6-7 times, with a fine-tooth comb, ran through it and said, here's what you say if this comes up, here's what you say if this comes up. These people are products. They are products of a machine that makes them look nice, okay, that makes them sound authentic, which they never come across as authentic. So that's why when Senator Slotkin was on that Breaking Points interview, and she thought it was going to be a softball, and she actually gets real pushback, you know, she doesn't know what to do with herself because these people aren't real. These people are cultivated and crafted for a certain image, right? And when you start going against that, the party will eat you alive. That's just how it is. Like, that's why, like, even Bernie Sanders and AOC, when they're doing the Stop the Oligarchy tour, oh, they're calling out Republicans. They're calling out Elon Musk. Great. But what about the rot in your own party? See, they can't do that. They can't explicitly do that, because if they started explicitly doing that, then they understand that the party would just turn on them immediately because they're cowards. They could have leveraged their voice and their support against Kamala Harris and forced her to put through an arms embargo, and they didn't, okay, because they were, I guess, more afraid of Trump, as if that strategy didn't allow there to be more dead Palestinians. That's the thing. If your strategy is let's wait and see, all the time you spend waiting and all the people who die is on you. Mm-hmm. And if that was the price worth paying, then that's something you need to rectify in yourself, in your soul. If you think, okay, the hundreds of thousands of people who died from you endorsing Kamala Harris to the end of 2024 was worth, then I don't know what to say to you. You know,
I just want to cut in. Their strategy wasn't to wait it out. Their strategy was to lie about the intentions of the Biden administration. You have, I believe AOC and Bernie Sanders both getting up and making statements that Harris and Biden are working tirelessly for a ceasefire. That's a direct quote. And what we learned later from, I believe, an Israeli official who was bragging about how the Biden administration did not push back on anything. One single time, did not push back against what the Israeli government was carrying out in Gaza a single time, and he thanked God for that opportunity for the state of Israel. And so it's disgusting that these who many Americans view as the more progressive wing of the Democrat Party, like AOC and Bernie, are totally complicit in genocide. And they've done so much harm to co-opt this supposed opposition party.
Exactly, which is why, like, when I say I'm going to go after the two-party system, people need to know I don't just mean I'm going to take down the superstars. The superstars are cultivated. The superstars are frankly already churned through. Their factory bred. Like, what you see in a superstar is just the result of marketing, of consultants, and of just like pure industrial slop. I mean going after that machine that creates Democrats that lull people into this sort of Dem Tea Party thing that people claim they see happening right now. You know, these consultants are like vultures. They don't give a shit about the genocide and then Palestine. They're just like, maybe we can make money off this. Yeah. People suddenly don't like Israel anymore. Let's put this one out there now. Let's put that one out there now, saying that they don't support Israel. There we go. Now we can make more money. These people are opportunists. Okay, and the Bronx Democratic Club is the worst and most corrupt of them all. Not only that, the Benjamin Franklin Reform Club. I'm naming names right now that are in my district, and I don't care because they're already opposed to me anyway. And that's the other thing, like why I'm not running in the primary. See, I know, for example, I've made only one commitment to running in the primary, and I'm saying this publicly because I know they're going to watch this. If nobody else primaries Ritchie Torres by January, I will do it. I swear to God, I will do it. You can hold me to that right now. But see, by saying that, they're going to throw somebody in there now who's not going to put up a fight against Ritchie Torres. And even if you believe Michael Blake is sincere, like let's say Michael Blake is a real guy who actually does want to primary Ritchie Torres in a real way, I believe the Democratic Party is going to throw somebody else in there just to split the vote, to keep Ritchie Torres in, because that block I was talking about earlier with Riverdale is so hardcore, right, that, you know, they're not going to be split against Ritchie Torres. You know, they will be firm, right? And they're the highest voter turnout. So the other two candidates that would be going up against Torres will be splitting the progressive vote. So, yeah.
We'll see what happens. After Ritchie went after me, I'd seen an old stat describing how Ritchie advocated for Israel. I believe it was 236% more often than he advocated to combat poverty.
Right.
And this was, I did this out of both curiosity and spite, but I went through all of his statements he made online and recalculated everything and found that the proportion had ballooned to over 3,200%. He clearly wishes to represent Israel rather than his own constituents. What issues in our political system does Ritchie symbolize? Because yes, he's a problem, but it's also greater than him.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. That's a great question. First of all, I think you might have earned the title of Ritchie Torres' biggest hater. So I bestow that onto you to have gone through all of the statements. You know, okay, fine. It'll be a shared crown. Ritchie Torres is only a symptom of a big problem, and he's a disgusting symptom. See, so there's Hakeem Jeffries is another good example of this, because Hakeem Jeffries represents parts of Brooklyn like Brownsville, Brooklyn, which is just another completely fucked up place in New York City like the South Bronx. He represents East New York, right? So these lobbyists, these corporate wings, these consultants, the people that make up the party structures know that the people in these districts are uneducated and illiterate and will listen to whoever tells them to go vote if that person is approved and liked in the community. So they have this corporate machine in the party system where they take somebody like Ritchie Torres. Oh, he's great. He's marketable. He came from public housing. You know, he's LGBTQIA. He fits all the boxes on the identity politics chart. He's young and fresh. And you know what? We're going to load up his war chest with money because we need him to keep voting the way we want him. And the population is too stupid to vote him out. So he'll be there for decades. And this is a politician we can have in our pockets. And that's what they do to almost all establishment politicians, whether it's him, Cory Booker, or Hakeem Jeffries. Okay, they have Hakeem Jeffries is like a drone. Just listen to the way the guy talks. Everything he says, it's almost like it's already been scripted out for him, you know? And he's like fucking disgusting. All these people are disgusting. And it's just another reason why the two-party system has to die. And that infrastructure has to go with it. You know, they have mastered social engineering like you wouldn't believe. And a lot of it is because, you know, we know that the CIA does interfere not just in foreign elections, they've interfered in our elections too. You know, they've been involved in co-opting leftist movements since the 60s, 70s, 80s. You know, there was Operation Mockingbird where they propagandized the American people through mainstream media news. There was a COINTELPRO where they were going in and disrupting leftist organizations. I'm supposed to believe they don't still do that shit to this day. Of course they do, right? So they need the two-party system to continue because that's the only cover that these intelligence agencies have right now. And I honestly believe that people like Ritchie Torres and most of our Congress, and I say most because there are people like Thomas Massie, who, you know, has been saying the right thing lately. Marjorie Taylor Greene, I would consider her actions courageous because I know she was a big Zionist, pro-Israeli person 2 years ago. And she's been coming out with saying some statements which, whether or not you believe them, has given ammunition for other people. Like there's this candidate named Aaron Baker who's challenging Randy Fine in the GOP primary. And, you know, Mr. Baker has been calling this a genocide. And because Marjorie Taylor Greene had the courage to say it first. So can we believe that? I don't know. I'm a firm believer that you shouldn't believe any politician, like, because you have to hold their feet to the fire always. A politician's job is not for you to idolize them or to like them. It's for them to represent your best interests in the U.S. Congress. And only after they've shown you that they've done that can they actually earn your respect, you know, and that, I think, is part of what an electoral process is. So regardless, go on.
I would have to agree with you that I commend Marjorie Taylor Greene for calling it genocide. But yes, we have to stay, you know, centered on the fact that she was calling Palestinians, you know, animals and terrorists. We need to kill them all way back when it was beneficial for her politics to do that. But I think we have to look at this like Bernie Sanders has not called it genocide. He's continually pushed back on the use of that term, and Marjorie Taylor Greene has said it first. So that just like tells you where these two are in terms of genocide complicity.
People can change.
Bernie's a liberal Zionist.
I'm a believer
I think
that
what
people
we're
can
seeing,
change. But sorry, go on. Sorry.
I think what we're seeing is the way that there's a lack of any progressive who has power, influence and is calling it a genocide. There's nobody like that on the left who's in the mainstream. So we have right-wing pundits like Tucker Carlson taking advantage of this anti-Israel stance, which, I mean, I appreciate Tucker Carlson having on Anthony Aguilar and the nun from Gaza. Like, it humanizes Palestinians, it brings awareness, but he's also using this in his own self-interest to platform his Christian nationalist message. And so I think we do need to recognize that in the case of a lot of these right-wing pundits like Candace Owens. I think the reason she is against Israel has to do with some roots in anti-Semitism as well. But, you know, there has to be nuance to this discussion. So I just wanted to add that in.
Oh, I agree.
But,
I think oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, I agree. And that, I think, speaks to the sort of vacuum that has been created, because if the people that are supposed to, like Bernie Sanders, a lot of people support Bernie Sanders. And if he's not going to be calling it a genocide, then you kind of have this vacuum where it's like, okay, well, Tucker Carlson said it. And now he's also, because he said it, like a great best example. I hate Nick Fuentes because he's a racist. He's actually racist and anti-Semitic. Does he say it's a genocide? Yeah, sure. But that doesn't then give you an excuse to be racist and anti-Semitic towards people. And I think a lot of people are actually falling for that now. And he's one of these people that push genuine anti-Semitism, which, you know, we should clarify, like, Zionism is not Judaism. I think you know that. I know that. And, like, because and you know, there's a lot of people who are Jewish right now who see what Israel is doing, and they're desecrating what it means to be a Jew at this point, because Netanyahu's saying we're doing this on behalf of the Jewish population, but it only causes a further increase in anti-Semitism because of people like Nick Fuentes who say, see, this is what the Jews are doing. The Jews are doing this and that. And, you know, I think it only speaks to the fact that the worst of the worst, like Netanyahu, have allowed for the anti-Semitism to only proliferate.
I absolutely agree with that. Zionism is not Judaism, and it hurts me when I hear people say, you know, maybe Hitler was right, maybe he was trying to stop this from happening. Like, this is what Israel has brought to the world, committing this horrific genocide and creating this one of the worst stains in human history. Just empowers anti-Semites like Nick Fuentes to where people are saying this guy he's so truthful, he's always been right, and he was, you know, ignored, and now he's like this underdog figure, and it empowers people like him and Kanye West and Candace Owens. I would add in there as well. But I watched your recent interview on Redacted, and you use this analogy that I really liked, and I want you to kind of dig into that here, where you said that American citizens are in a boxcar on the way to Auschwitz right now. Can you elaborate on this?
Oh, yeah. You know, the thing is that we're over here arguing about petty things or little political things that, you know, Jesus, I don't remember exactly how I described it on that interview, but it was something like, you know, we're over here saying that, like, Republicans are bad, Democrats are bad, you know, we're each arguing with each other over these petty differences, and we're just talking about how do we make the boxcar a little more comfortable, not realizing the fact that the entire system is about to collapse. Like, the entire economic system of the United States is about to collapse because we have only been investing in war. We've only been investing in killing, genocide. We've been investing in weapons, and we don't invest in people here, right? So when I hear politicians today talk about how, we're going to, you know, cut taxes here and there, or how we're going to do this and that, and it never addresses the overall issue right now, where I think that, like, hey, this whole thing, like, we're already heading on a train to, you know, Auschwitz right now. Like, we should maybe talk about that as opposed to just, you know, what your tax policy is, or just little petty things like, I don't know. Yeah, well, go on.
I mean, we've watched essentially. I mean, that you can make the argument that these checks and balances that are meant to protect our democracy were not even there to begin with, but they've been proven to not be effective, as we've watched Trump just bulldoze over the court system, attack judges, ignore their court orders. Congress can't touch him. The bureaucracy can't touch him. Mainstream media is scared of him. He's making them sign off millions of their dollars when they criticize him, and he's dipping his fingers into higher education to make sure they're teaching the things that the fascist playbook that they want to instill in our youth, which is, I mean, I think this is going to be so destructive. And so we're quickly descending in this fascism. And I just really liked how you used that analogy.
I remember now. I remember
Yeah.
now. So I was talking about I was talking about the fact that like Palantir is running our entire government right now. Like the United States and Trump are allowing AI to surveil and monitor every American U.S. citizen right now, and immigrant. They're doing it on the basis of immigration, which is why ICE needs to be abolished, and it needs to be abolished like now. And so
Absolutely.
they're using this AI technology, not even just to monitor and surveil you, but to control you as well and to try and influence you. You know, we're getting to the point where this stuff is so scary. They can monitor your algorithm, what you see on social media now. They know what you're watching. They know the things that you like and dislike. They can make you think you like something you don't actually like just on the basis of what you've been seeing on your phone. That's how crazy and corrupt our government is right now, where we are descending into fascism right now. We're actually on a boxcar towards Auschwitz right now, and people want to talk about making the boxcar a little more comfortable, not discussing the fact that we're like, look what he's doing with the National Guard in DC.
Yep.
Right? He wants to do that everywhere. You know, is there an argument for order and safety? Sure, but not like that. You know, if you want to actually make neighborhoods safer, you invest in them, okay? Maybe instead of sending all of our money to Israel or, you know, shutting down hospitals here in the Bronx and shutting down schools here in the Bronx, maybe we just reopen those and reinvest in them. You know, maybe that's a way in which you can get people from turning into a gang life and turning into a productive life, you know? See, people don't want to be productive anymore because they don't see the point in it. You know, when the Columbine shooting happened, that was the day Bill Clinton dropped the most bombs on Yugoslavia. People don't know that, but that, like, more people died from those bombings in Yugoslavia than they did in Columbine. And I'm not trying to say that one was worse than the other. They were both clearly wrong and terrible. But how do Americans rectify in their mind this school shooting and it's like, that's a horrible tragedy, but then they can go and justify what's happening in Yugoslavia? See, young people growing up, they don't make that difference. They're like, this is the same thing. So we are growing up with violence. We're growing up with this culture of terror committed by us. See, we're the terrorists. The United States is acting like terrorists around the world right now. And that is the excuse for why this fascism continues to envelop the United States and why we're descending slowly and slowly into it. So, yeah.
And I think it's important to also point out that while it is a process, this descent into fascism, it doesn't only just go hand in hand with Trump in his first and second terms, and potentially more is what everyone's saying.
I hope not.
But like even under Biden, under Obama, Obama was a terrorist. Biden repressed student protesters. They arrested 3,300 students and teachers on college campuses, and they did everything in the service of oppressing and repressing dissent amongst the American people, all in preparation for these, like, how do I put this, like, overarching goals, like the war against Iran. That was being planned under Biden, and we might be going back to war against them at the behest of Israel once again over some manufactured threat that doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, do you think Americans are ready for an alternative vision for leadership?
You're damn right they are. I mean, it depends what you mean by alternative leadership because, see, you know, are they ready for it? I don't think is necessarily the right question. I think it's needed. If the United States wants to continue to exist in the next 5 years, we are going to need a rapid change in direction, like right now. That is the only way in which the United States can survive an economic collapse is if we put the entire debt restructuring. We have to take the entire debt that we owe and we have to audit it because a lot of it is just speculative bullshit. We spent $1 trillion in bailing out banks when they crashed. And that debt will never be repaid. The banks are never going to make that money again, and it doesn't contribute to anything productive. So the question as to whether or not people are ready for it, are they ready? They have to be. I'm going to make them ready for it because, and the thing is, people implicitly know something is fucked up. They knew something was fucked up, whether it was Kamala Harris, whether it's Trump, whether it was Biden, whether it was Obama or Bush. People knew something is wrong, right? People weren't so optimistic for Obama the second time he was elected. And like, you know, when I started learning more about the war crimes, like I remember being 10 years old. I think I was 10 years old and being woken up in the middle of the night to the people cheering outside in the streets because Obama had won. And I didn't know anything at the time. I just thought, oh, this is great. You know, America's going to have its first black president. This is amazing. And God, what a fucking shit show that was, you know. And you know, Democrats like to act like they have short-term memory because I remember, I think of Stephen Colbert, he brings out George Bush to be anti-Trump, and suddenly you had all these liberals and all these Dems like cheering on George Bush, he's our guy, not knowing that some of those people were protesting George Bush. You know what's funny?
Liz Cheney.
I'll say this, like the last time, and Liz Cheney, and that's a big thing. I have to send you this video because I was considering uploading this or not. I didn't. The last time I walked into a Democratic club was September 29th. And this was a Democratic club that was formed to get Ritchie Torres out. They hated Ritchie Torres. And I went in there at the request of some friends of mine who were like, listen, like, you know, we know you're not a Democrat, but maybe you should come anyway. I went there, and sadly, I went there on the day that they had a Kamala Harris coordinator come in who was talking about how they were going to send buses from New York to Pennsylvania to get votes. And my dumbass, who has a big mouth, I asked a very honest and simple question. What do I do if I am in Pennsylvania and a voter says to me, why did Kamala Harris say we're going to have the most lethal army in the world, and why is she campaigning with Liz Cheney? And before the coordinator could even answer, all I heard was, get out. Get out. Like, this is I will send you the video.
Oh, you're a goat.
Maybe we should repost it. Maybe we should post it, like, as like, and the funny thing was the beginning of the meeting was friendly because we had to introduce ourselves because we were new, and I said, my name's Jose Vega and I'm running against Ritchie Torres, and like the people were like, yeah, great, awesome. And then I asked that question. I wasn't even trying to be an asshole. I wasn't trying to like intervene in the way I
mean, it's a real question. Like,
yeah.
Why would she say this?
But the other thing about that was, as I was leaving, two people came out to talk to me like, Jose, wait. Like the thing you brought up about how Kamala Harris said we're going to have the most lethal army in the world. Like, we all were at a bar watching that speech at the DNC convention. And when she said that, people weren't clapping at the end, and they were shocked. They all looked at each other with mouth agape. Like, the people in the room that kicked you out all agree with you. And I said, okay, that's great. So what the fuck are we doing? What are you doing?
I know.
Like, if you actually believe this, why would you put your weight behind her? Why aren't you advocating for a difference? You know, you should be telling the truth. You shouldn't. And like, that's the other thing that contributes to people's declining mental health, because it doesn't make sense. If, you know, it's like, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to support this woman, even though she's endorsing genocide and supporting it. I still have to do it anyway because the alternative is worse. Maybe the alternative is worse. But just because you have, like, you know, a slightly less smellier pile of shit doesn't mean that you should accept that. People should not accept the things that are given to them. Okay, we don't have to accept just this or that. You know, if they're both bad, they're both bad. People can find the courage to overcome it and say, I demand a standard. And that standard should be that we don't need to invest money into Israel. And I don't want my money to go and kill people, okay, under my name.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And we just can't keep doing this, voting for the lesser evil. It's brought us literal fascism.
Yes.
And I personally like crediting the estimated 19 million blue voters who voted for Biden in 2020 but did not vote for Harris in 2024 as the reason they majorly lost. And their top issue, which they reported in a poll, was the genocide in Gaza. And so there is a lot of Americans. There's a sizable minority, maybe majority now, as half of American voters say it's genocide now, but that are willing to stand up for what's right, and they're not going to accept something evil for them. And I mean, we saw the Democrats fail. They brought us into fascism because they wouldn't stop doing a genocide. And so when people say this issue about Israel and Palestine is not that important, it's integral to how our politics has been operating, particularly in the last 2 years. And you stress that our nation should be developing people rather than only keeping them on crutches. Could you dig into this and how you think we would move forward to carry this out, particularly to elevate the Bronx?
Absolutely. Ritchie Torres was celebrating because they had opened up a new food pantry in the Bronx. And as somebody whose family uses food pantries, I used to go with my mom on the weekends. We would go from one food pantry to another to ensure that we had enough food at home. I think it's despicable that people are reduced to, have to have handouts and that people can't be self-sufficient anymore. I'm not opposed to mutual aid. I'm not opposed to food pantries at all, especially now. These are the things that keep the people in the Bronx fed. They're very important and very vital right now, especially when the federal government has failed them. And I think that food pantries and handouts like that are symptoms of and evidence of just a total collapse of an economy, that people can't be self-sufficient anymore, that their dollar doesn't allow them to budget in stuff like groceries, rent, and, savings. The majority of people who live in this district here make about $23,000. That's the median income. You know what the poverty line is in all of New York City? $34,000 a year. New York City believes that if you make $34,000 a year, that's the line at which that separates you between being poor and not poor. And $34,000 a year isn't anything in the Bronx, in the Bronx or in New York City alone.
Yeah.
No, I believe that we need to have a people-centered economy again. Right now we measure our growth through what's called the GDP, gross domestic output, who's buying our stuff, who's exporting, importing, that whole kind of crap. And one of our largest exports, and a lot of our companies produces weapons and missiles, right? That helps prop up our economy. And it's a horrible, horrible thing, because then people invest, like Ritchie Torres, but you and I can invest in these companies if we wanted to and make money. Like, oh, great, the Congress is going to vote to send more, funding towards Northrop Grumman or Lockheed Martin. Put me down for $1,000 on Northrop Grumman, and then the value of that stock will go up. So it also encourages, especially because of the system of the economy, the economic lottery system that we live in now, where people can their morals go out the window, and they say, well, yeah, it kind of sucks, but hey, it's going to allow me, if I invest $5,000 in Lockheed Martin, and I know that the Congress is, voting to continue this military-industrial complex, that my $5,000 investment will become $10,000 pretty quickly. That's the kind of thinking and mentality that our current system promotes right now, and I'm tired of it. And what I propose is an alternative. See, the Bronx used to be one of the biggest industrial output centers of New York City. In the 1910s, there were about 400 and some odd piano companies in the country. 45 of them or 54 of them were in the Bronx alone. Right, that was a country that had a big demand for pianos, and people were producing them. On top of that, many iron foundries were made here. Were here in the Bronx. There were parts of the Capitol Dome that were the girders were made here in the Bronx. The statue, the Lincoln Memorial, was made by the Piccarelli brothers from the Bronx. But one of the last factories that remained open in the Bronx was in Hunts Point. It closed in 1977. It was called the Grand Iron Works. They built a lot of the New York City skyline. They were producing 50,000 metric tons of steel a year. And they were building courthouses. They were building skylines. They were building office buildings. They were building the New York City that we have today. And it was providing a lot of jobs for people. And what I'm calling for is a reindustrialization process. So that marked the end of in the industrialization of America and what we're in now called the deindustrialization, which means we have a gig economy. So you have people doing stuff like DoorDash or Uber Eats or content creation too, stuff that doesn't actually add any real value to the daily lives of Americans. Why isn't the United States right now having a crash program where we can take 20,000 youth from all over the country and saying, we want a national rail line of maglev trains. You guys, you 20,000 are going to be involved in laying out, surveying, building, maintaining these maglev trains, and you're going to reconfigure how we do transportation around the country and the world as a whole, right? That is a people-centered economy right there. Just that one thing alone. And we are going to bring that back to the Bronx. We are going to, because if you're one of the things that I want to do is I want to build new cities. I want to build new cities because we haven't built the last city we built was Las Vegas. But you think about it, if I want to build 10 new cities, New York City sized cities in 10 years, you need the population, which is why you let the immigrants come in. Not only do you let them come in, you say, if you take a training program for 2 years, we'll make sure that you and your family are paid and you're paid a decent wage so that they can survive while you're training. And when you build the city, we'll give you citizenship in exchange for building the city. You will be an American in a city that you were responsible in building. And that, to me, is a people-centered economy, because then when you build the schools, you're going to need teachers to occupy those schools and populate those schools. When you build a hospital, you're going to need doctors and nurses to populate those hospitals. When you build all kinds of major necessity of infrastructure, and when you want to train the students, right? When you try to train the people who are 18 to 26, like here in the Bronx, a lot of them are illiterate and unskilled, and they have mental health problems, which means that you're going to have to provide adequate health care for them, and you're going to have to address the mental health crisis in order for them to work productively. So you're already changing the entire orientation of 800 military bases around the world to a crash program to revive the United States so that people can be proud of it and build it. And you think about it, it's going to take a lot of steel, it's going to take a lot of glass to build these cities and these new cities and rebuild the stuff that we broke. And the last point I want to make is that hopefully, when there is a truly free and sovereign Palestine that decides now's the time for us to rebuild from what was destroyed, I hope that the Bronx can be one of the main exporters of steel and glass to Palestine when it decides it's going to rebuild itself. That's what I think atonement looks like. We have committed a great sin of aiding a genocide, and the only atonement that can be, we can't bring back the people that died, but we can sure as hell build a better future for those that are still there. And that will involve helping them, a global effort to help them rebuild better than they ever were before. And that's going to require us sending them steel, glass, and other major infrastructure components. Then we can start their economy up again. Then we can really give them an independent and sovereign Palestine.
Absolutely. I love that. I wanted to hear your take on how Democrats, or why Democrats lost in 2024, because I feel like the mainstream neoliberal discourse that dominates the sphere on this is quite pathetic. It's deliberately revisionist, and it serves the purpose of protecting the establishment power by absolving themselves of a majority of the responsibility. So let me know how you view the way Biden and Harris lost.
Oh, I think genocide was one of the bigger reasons of it, because they kept saying, we're doing everything we can, as we know they weren't doing anything, because these people were in power. These people were in power. It wasn't like Trump, because Trump was saying he was going to do the same thing. He's like, just wait till I'm in the office. You'll see. Wait till I get in the office and you'll see I'm going to do this, right? So he could get away with saying that, but they couldn't, because they're in power. It's like, you're the president and vice president right now. Just do something about it right now. And we know famously in history, people like Reagan have made the call to Israel and said, you need to stop this shit right now, or else we're pulling funding. And then they stop. So, and, you know, like you said before, Biden never pushed back on this. So I think that's one reason. The second reason was she was campaigning with Liz Cheney. How the fuck do you think you can get away with that when most of the people in your base who are Democrats were protesting people like Dick Cheney and Bush? And you thought, oh yeah, no, this is going to help us win the moderate Republican. No, see, what that told me, and as they later admitted, was they knew they were going to lose from the start. And they thought, well, we have to get the moderates. The moderates like Liz Cheney. That's how we can win them back. And it was a total pathetic attempt to do so. That's why she lost 7 of all the contested battleground states. She lost them all. And like, you know, it's maybe, I don't know if it's Schadenfreude or something, but I was like so happy she lost. I wasn't happy Trump won. I was happy she lost. Okay, because like she could have done something and she didn't, and she did not deserve to win the presidency. You know, so
I agree. I feel like there was an internal polling the entire time I read this report that said they were always going to lose. And so I don't know. I don't understand the pragmatic decision to blow $2 billion nearly and then some to pander to some moderate base that is obviously going to always vote for Trump in this situation, particularly when you have a campaign that stands for nothing but broken promises with their base. The DNC recently voted on their Gaza platform, striking down a proposal to support an arms embargo against the apartheid state. Amongst the Democratic base, 92% report support for an arms embargo and 77% say it's genocide. This is the easiest issue. It's a 92-8 split. When will the establishment have to reckon with their failures and align with the base? And what do you think that will look like as to the future of the party?
Yeah, you know, I know some people were putting a lot of hope and stock into the DNC resolution, hoping that this might actually do something, and then they only just like shot it down, and they tried to replace it with like some watered down thing. I think what it was a guy's name Ken Friedland, right? The chair of the DNC. Yeah. He like put out like a ChatGPT generated statement on the slaughter and genocide in Gaza. Is like, I understand people want something, so today we're introducing this. He couldn't even bother to write it himself. He just asked AI to do it, which was like awful. Yeah, I think it only goes further to show what I mean when I say the Democratic Party is just done and it's going to die. Because like I said, like there might be 1 or 2 good people in the party who, you know, are outliers. Like, you know, Zoran might be good. Like Rashida Tlaib, great example. She's a good example of somebody who is in the Democratic Party and has decided she's going to say whatever the fuck she wants to say. Mm-hmm. I like that and I respect that. And I think that, you know, even then, she's just an exception to the rule, which is that, you know, the Democratic Party at this point does not want a ceasefire, but they want to campaign on it. They want to campaign on peace. This is what they do. They give you an issue that they have no intention of fixing because they know that they can milk you for your donations to enact some change. Like, some people even say they purposely lost the 2024 election just so they can keep fundraising and saying, we need to fight back hard against Trump now. Now the fight has to go on. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how well that strategy will work. From what I've heard, Democrats are struggling to raise funds after this massive failure. People don't trust them.
Good.
They don't trust them with the money. They don't trust them to stand up for their interests. They don't trust them to stand for a single policy or to correct any of the complaints that, you know, and I think there's a lot of liberals who get this wrong about the Democratic base, that the progressive voters and the leftists who are voting blue aren't important to the party. These progressives and leftists are the people who are the most active. They're out in the streets. They're organizing. They're building their community and organizations to fight their opposition and make real change in this country. And when the Democrats lose that demographic, they lose a lot of the spark that may have been in their campaign pushes. So, I mean, I think that we might be looking at a future where the midterms are going to be a bloodbath for a lot of these incumbent Democrats. It's going to be the Wild West, essentially, as we see if this party is going to... I mean, what do they have, like 17% satisfaction rating amongst their base? That's abysmal. That's worse than Trump. But I wanted to pivot here. You self-identify as, quote, straight up LaRouche.
Yes.
I'm pretty unfamiliar with him and his followers. Could you tell me all about that?
Absolutely. I'm happy to talk about it. I've been called Mussolini right-winger, fascist, cult member. I've been slandered all throughout because of my association with the LaRouche organization and Schiller Institute. So I guess I will take this two ways. One is why I joined the LaRouche organization. I was 14 or 15 years old in New York City, and I was walking around. I went to Manhattan Hunter Science High School, and these guys had tables that said "Impeach Obama," and I didn't know why they wanted to impeach Obama, but that was kind of like where I started learning about, oh shit, like Obama's actually not a good guy. He did what? And he's doing what? And he's regime change, and he's still advocating for war, and he's trying to lock up Edward Snowden. So that was kind of like the beginning of it. But what I really learned was creative, nonviolent, direct action, because I was working with people like Bernard Lafayette, who were some of Dr. King's closest lieutenants. And I got to share the stage with him at Carnegie Hall, talking about how the world needs nonviolent action as a way to enact meaningful change in order to bring about a brighter future. And I thought, well, I want to do that. And so then, and looking in more into the history of the LaRouche organization, like my senior high school teacher, I was talking about these ideas that excited her, and she's like, yeah, like, where did you get these ideas? Like, I'm for Glass-Steagall. Like, that's what I'm for. Like, where have you been reading this stuff? I was like, oh, I've been with the LaRouche people. The next day, she, like, sits me down. She's like, Jose, she, like, turns the computer to me. I think you're in a cult. I'm like, what? And the reason that stink has existed forever is because I think you're not going to find an organization that made more enemies than us. All the right enemies, I'll put it that way. Like, he went after the ADL in 1978. He put out, the LaRouche organization put out a pamphlet called Zionism is Not Judaism. In 1978, they were, like, talking about how, the Zionism cult was created in Britain as a way to conflate Judaism and Zionism so that people who identify as Jewish would fall into the trap of supporting colonization and genocide. So the ADL didn't like him since then. Then he made enemies with Henry Kissinger. Henry Kissinger wrote personal memos, which you can find. These are all public domain now. Personal memos to the FBI and the CIA saying, can we take care of this fucking guy, Lyndon LaRouche? He's like being annoying, and this is just too much at this point. Can we just get rid of him? So they started the Get LaRouche Task Force. This is all a very real thing. Then they put him in jail, not because of anything he did, because of conspiracy to commit fraud. Whenever you see conspiracy to, that just means, well, we think you were about to do the crime that we're putting you in jail for. And they put one of his associates, Mike Billington, in jail for over 80 years for a non-violent offense, which is completely unheard of. Thankfully, he was let out after 5 years. Though they successfully slandered the guy, they successfully character assassinated him, and I genuinely believe that if the internet was around, they wouldn't have gotten away with it. But because all the mainstream media was reporting on it, there was one book in particular written that was commissioned by some of the worst people to be written about, like Lyndon LaRouche and the New American Fascism, which I've read, and you can just debunk a lot of it just by comparing what he claims to what the material was being put out. Regardless, like, that was where a lot of the enemies came from against Lyndon LaRouche in the 70s and 80s. And when he went to jail for 5 years, they just successfully character assassinated him, stomped on him, and said, like, see, yep, there was anything good here. He's a cult leader, and that's how it is, and you can't say anything. So a lot of days when people say, oh, Lyndon LaRouche, he sucks. Why? Well, we can't really tell you why. Or they say he was, a CIA guy, or he was a right-winger guy. But, there were people like Ramsey Clark, who was the Attorney General to Lyndon Johnson, who defended him and said that this is one of the biggest mischaracterizations of justice ever. And so Ramsey Clark, the Attorney General of the United States, came and he defended Lyndon LaRouche. And he spoke on his name. He said, I don't necessarily agree with everything they say or what they do, but the only thing I see here is that he's guilty of writing and publicating his ideas, which are publicly available. So now, what are his ideas, and why? What is it that I actually do, and why I'm proud to be associated with the LaRouche organization today? He died. I never got to meet the guy. I only ever spoke to him once, I think, over Zoom or over Google Hangouts at the time. I never, my association was never personal with him. I'm inspired by the fact that Helga Zepp-LaRouche today is hosting the International Peace Coalition calls, and she has had people on like Naledi Pandor. I think you know Naledi Pandor. She's the former foreign minister to South Africa. She brought the case to the International Court of Justice against Israel. And now Naledi Pandor is like a close collaborator of the Schiller Institute, which is just a sister organization of the LaRouche organization. But like now she's a close collaborator of that. And not just her, but many government officials from all over the world have signed on to the International Peace Coalition calls as forms for trying to figure out how the hell do we stop this genocide. And not only that, but we've attracted the attention and the support of many people like Ray McGovern, who has gotten on to our calls, and many other leading world experts that people watch today in independent media have gone on and have endorse what the Schiller Institute is doing, and that is a plan for peace. See, the thing that really made LaRouche dangerous was everything we're seeing with the Global South, everything we're seeing with BRICS and the Belt and Road Initiative, is because the LaRouche organization laid down the groundwork for that in the 70s and 80s. And that's not speculation, that's a provable fact. Lyndon LaRouche had created a pamphlet in 1978 called the International Development Pamphlet, an International Development Bank, which is kind of what they're talking about right now. This is a pamphlet called How the International Development Bank Would Work. It would be an international bank that would lend out money to countries that were developing so that they could then develop, build modern infrastructure, and become a modern nation. And that then progressed and became a 1993 pamphlet called The New Silk Road. And now Helga Zepp-LaRouche today, this is Lyndon LaRouche's wife, is known as the Silk Road Lady in China. Lyndon LaRouche was meeting with people like Jose Lopez Portillo in Mexico. He was meeting with people like Indira Gandhi. He was going to Japan. He was going to Germany. And some of Russia's biggest economists today, like Sergei Glaziev, worked and studied LaRouche's economics. Like, a majority of the world understands the role that Lyndon LaRouche and his organization played in shaping the Global South and economy and the economics that are used to this day. And that's you could do like a whole marathon on why that's true. And now, like, Putin is proposing new mechanisms for an international bank that would invest credit into the Global South nations. And he proposed that at the Kazan summit in 2024. And he just proposed it again at this summit that I was talking about. That is the influence that this organization has had. And it's sad that in the United States, he's been character assassinated. But in other countries that were never Western friendly, understood, holy shit, this guy's getting character assassinated in the United States, but his ideas are right. And they've been adopted and implemented around the world. And so that's why I'm proud, like, despite the fact that I know when people see that, they're like, oh, ew, you just have to do one Google search and you get the worst kinds of things. But to me, I know that at some point in the future, there will be a recognition that this organization was involved in influencing the economic outlook of many of the Global South and developing nations. And we have written extensively about it, and that is something that nobody can disprove. And that is why I am proud to talk about the Global South. That is why I'm proud to associate it with Lyndon and Helga Zepp-LaRouche in particular. And I will never shy away from that. I will never hide that. You know, I'm not like a cheering on fanboy thing, but at the same time, like, that's just who I am, where I come from, and why I think the way I do. Everything that we've talked about, all my previous interviews, has been shaped by my association with this organization that I honestly credit with saving my life. I don't know who I would have been if I had never encountered this organization. And so for anybody who may still have concerns or doubts, I'm an open book. People should just judge me by what I do, what I say, and they can ask me anything they'd like. So, yeah.
I respect that a lot. I think it's very clear to everyone watching me, particularly, that you know a lot about what you're talking about. And although you don't speak like a politician, you find a way to get the message across effectively.
Well, thank you.
Would you, you're welcome, would you define your stance on Palestine as explicitly anti-Zionist, or how would you define it? And what's your case to convince others to stand up for Palestinian liberation?
So I am an anti-Zionist. I do not support Zionism. I think Zionism is an evil disease that has permeated in the minds of many Americans, like my own dad. My dad's a Christian fundamentalist who believes that Israel has, this inherent biblical right to exist. Not that my dad doesn't support me. He loves me. He's going to support me. I had this funny conversation with him where we were eating breakfast together at a diner. He was like, son, I love you. I'm so proud of you. I know you did everything you could against this guy. It's just God doesn't bless you because you don't bless Israel. That's it. But I'm with you. God might not be with you.
That?
Yeah, he's like, God might not be with you, but I'm with you.
Oh my God.
Again, my dad is a great man. He gives me a lot of wisdom, and he is one of my best friends. And but thankfully he's also been coming around, because I sent him this Munter Isaac clip about how he takes down Zionism. And so my dad, he's been sending me videos that he's been watching of other pastors, and he's like, yo, son, Israel has no right to do this. This is not God's. God would not approve of this. So my dad's kind of coming around. But
I think we relate in that way.
Yeah.
When I became vocal about Palestine, it was very shortly after October 7th happened. And my parents were very because I've always been a very political guy, and I talk about it at home, but my parents were very standoffish about the topic. They didn't really want to engage, and I believe it's because religious Zionism that they held. But now my dad's sending me interview clips of AIPAC officials getting owned, and memes making fun of the IDF. It's actually inspiring to watch. But yesterday, I believe, the International Association of Genocide Scholars voted in favor of a resolution stating that Israel's actions in Gaza meet the legal definition of genocide. What steps, and this could be very basic, do you think should be taken or must be taken to achieve justice for Palestine? And how does the world move forward from this stain on our humanity?
Well, it's a great question. I'm very much somebody who believes that you need another Nuremberg trial, a very serious Nuremberg trial. And I think I think the only way you're ever going to get that is if it's going to require major interventions from the entire world and major nations. I think that you're going to have to hold people like Yoav Gallant, Netanyahu, Ben-Gvir, Smotrich, and then American politicians too, all completely accountable by hosting some kind of new Nuremberg trial 2.0. And the particulars of that are pretty nasty, because Israel is an undeclared nuclear nation. That's the thing, right? If you want to try to figure out how to dismantle Israel, well, they have this thing called the Samson option, where if they ever actually felt an existential threat, they will blow up the world, because they don't give a fuck. These people are absolutely insane. But the way to move...
And there's a book on it you can read if viewers want to learn more about that.
Yeah, the Samson
called The Samson Option.
Seymour Hersh wrote that one. And, I think what the way to move forward is major nations are going to have to come together, like Russia, China, India, which they're already... the Global South is pretty united, and they want to help Palestine. The atonement, because I think about this constantly, I do play a responsibility in the genocide because I'm an American citizen and there are atrocities being committed under my name. And as a U.S. citizen, whether or not I'm the one voting to send these weapons, it's my job to hold them accountable. And if I'm not doing that on a consistent basis, I think that I'm failing. And there's nothing we can do that's going to bring back the lives of the people that were killed or destroyed. It's going to take years and years and years before any kind of recognition of a genocide can ever happen here in the United States, just because of the horror and the fact that our politicians are so bought. But if major nations come together and say, we can't fix the past, but we can give you a bright future, and we can help you whoever decides to take authority with Gaza, I hope it's going to be the Gazans. It has to be the people of Palestine who decide to take up their authority. They're going to need help jumpstarting their new economy. They're going to need help. Like I said, hopefully by the point that, you know, Palestine is able to declare its independence and sovereignty, that nations will be ready to come together and say, here is the materials you need, here are our workers, we want to work hand in hand with you to create a new Palestine that will have the development and infrastructure it deserves and requires. And I think most of the world is ready to step in and help. There are just some blockages right now with the Trump administration allowing Netanyahu to just have free reign over Israel. But I genuinely believe that we'll be able to reconstruct Palestine and rebuild it better than it ever was before. And there will be memorials, there will be, but I was just saying that, like, you know, we will, the world is ready to rebuild Palestine. There will be museums, there will be memorials, there will be worldwide recognition of what was done, and never again will have a different meaning. You know, it won't just be about the Holocaust that happened in World War II. It'll be about the Holocaust that happened in Gaza and Palestine. And so I think that taking on that approach and that mentality is the way in which we'll move forward. It has to be a global vision. It has to be a vision for a future. You know, we have to be future oriented, and that's very much what I'm trying to influence here in the United States, and what I will, and I know that the world is ready to go in a future orientation, and we're going to fight like hell here in the United States to get that orientation. And hopefully when we get that Bronx steel industrial plant back, they can be one of the first to send that steel and glass over to Palestine. And not only that, they can go there too and help reconstruct as well. And yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That would be beautiful, Justice. Amen, brother. We're getting to the end here, so just a few more questions. How do you plan to wake up the district to what's going on with their own representative and with the federal government?
Well, door knocking. We are going to need people to knock on every door in the Bronx, and that's going to require you and others to volunteer. We have our website, which hopefully will be updated by the time this goes up, or if not, it's still votevega.nyc. The donate and volunteer button work. See, the thing is here, people either don't know Ritchie Torres, or they kind of know him and don't know anything about him other than, yeah, that's my congressman. We have to knock on every single door, and the only thing we have to do is say, did you know your congressman profited after the death of children? I can prove it to you. Did you know that instead of helping save All Hallows Catholic High School, he sent money that could have been used to save that school to Israel? Yeah. Did you know that the reason why the NYCHA housing that we're in right now looks like crap and nobody's fixing it is because all that money that he said he was going to bring to public housing went to Israel? And I need your help to just help me do that. Just help me do that. And we can wake up people in the Bronx by door knocking, by being outside, by being as visible as possible in the district, and letting people know there's a viable alternative to Ritchie Torres, and there's a viable alternative to war, to a grander vision. We are going to inspire people to want to be politically active again by telling them there is a future. There is a beautiful future that the rest of the world is waiting for us to catch up to if we decide to join them. Instead of treating them like enemies, we can treat them like allies and work with them.
I think you would agree that as your campaign gains steam, AIPAC will step in to pour in millions to maintain Ritchie's House seat. What's your strategy to square off with them?
Well, that'll be quite interesting because I think the more money they spend, it'll start having a toxic influence against them. This isn't New York 16. We're not in Rye. We're not in Hastings-on-Hudson, okay? This is the South Bronx, and people know that if you're getting attacked here, it's for a good reason, right? If the larger power, if the big bully is beating on you, the smaller guy, they know something's wrong there, and they will come to my aid. So let him try that shit. Let him try it. Seriously, let him try it. I want the fight. I want the fight. I want the fight because I have receipts. Okay, I've got it all. I'm ready to kick this guy's ass out of here. Just you wait.
Hell yeah.
And not they can spend $100 million in this district. I don't give a shit. You know, they're gonna have to shoot me if they want me to stop. I'm not manifesting that. I'm not manifesting that. But I'm just saying that's what it's gonna take if they want to shut me up.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask, because I think it's important, how do you keep yourself grounded in your humanity, and how can others do the same?
Oh, poetry and classical music, classical arts as a whole. I that's one thing I didn't touch upon in this, is that I'm a big believer in beautiful culture. I believe that our culture is what makes people human. And I think that great classical art, anything that is inspiring. I've been reading Palestinian poetry lately too. You know, it's a humble reminder that we're a human being. And that means that no one is greater than another person. And that also means that we have such a big creative responsibility and our ability to be creative and solve these problems. You know, people have created just wonderful technologies that have saved millions and millions and billions of lives and have allowed us to live to where we've gotten through so far. I want to continue to proliferate great minds. I want there to be more people on this planet that can be creative to solutions for problems that we have. And so I read a lot of poetry. I read a lot of Robert Frost, Edgar Poe, Shakespeare, and I try to memorize a lot of poetry, and I try to listen to a lot of classical music. I think it helps. And of course, you know, people who support me, anybody who donates, I give them a call to thank them. And they always encourage me, because sometimes I feel like I'm not living up to the standard that people need me to be. I feel like I have a responsibility to be a more than what I am, you know. And so when people reassure me that they're supporting me despite the fact that I don't have millions of dollars, it helps. It really does help. And I think about the people here that have had the greatest injustices done to them for over the last 50 years, that the Bronx has become artificially destroyed, or not it is destroyed through artificial means. It has been imposed upon this district, the poverty. And I think somebody's got to call this out at the root. It's not just a Ritchie Torres problem. That's what somebody will say, but it's not. It's not him. Like, one congressman is not going to magically clean up the district, although he'll do a hell of a lot, you know. And so that's just reminders that, like, I'm here in the South Bronx, in the poorest congressional district in the country, and these people deserve somebody who's going to actually fight for them earnestly. I'm not perfect, but I know that I will do my best to make sure that their voice is actually heard and represented in the Congress, no matter what.
For our final question, I wanted to ask you, what's one story from your neighborhood or from where you grew up that stays with you?
When I was petitioning for Diane Sare to get on the ballot for U.S. Senate in 2022, I was collecting signatures in Harlem. And I was in this particular place in Harlem that was just over the bridge into the Bronx. And I was collecting signatures, and there was a guy who was slumped over. He was on heroin or drugs or something, and he was just slumped. His arms were dangling on the floor, and I'm watching him, and then there's this other guy who's watching him. And then this other guy, this older guy, maybe in his 50s, starts recording him. He starts recording him. And so we're both watching this guy in front of me. And then that guy comes to me and he says, "Excuse me, sir, can you help me send this video to my son? I want him to see what his brother has become so that he doesn't become the same way." And it's like, oh, like that's also your son. And so I think about the fact that open air drug trading has been allowed to proliferate by New York politicians for 50 years now, that those are the kinds of scenes that have become normal now. And I think, like, oh my God, like, this global drug trading apparatus that has been allowed to happen by our Congress is affecting the people here in New York City. And when that happened, I had to sit. I couldn't petition anymore. Like, I sat down and I just started crying because this guy, that's his son. That's his son. He lost one son and he's trying not to lose another one. And then he says, come on, kid. And like, he just drags his son along, trying to make him walk, trying to wake him up. And he's in this like drug, you know, this stupor, this drug stupor. And like right there, I was like, this is fucking crazy that you can have that there. And then just 2 miles south in the Upper East Side, there's people walking around like these yuppies that are just like, don't have a care in the world.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's one thing that has stuck with me for years now that like I can never forget.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's powerful. It was a pleasure to hear from you, Jose. I think your message resonates with the average American, and obviously you've got a long campaign trail ahead of you, and I hope you can keep your energy up.
I'm trying.
Guys, if you are able to, check Jose's link. I should put it in the description of the video and the link in my bio. It should be there at the top. So you can support his fight against corruption, and if you have the capacity, you're in New York City in the area, volunteer with him to supercharge the work that they need to accomplish here. So thank you for being with us, Jose. I hope we can do this again sometime.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, brother.